Hello everyone, I'm Automatic, and today we're going to be doing something a little different. If you knew me as a close friend or followed me when I was growing up, I had a love for all sorts of things. My main thing you all know I like is of course trains, as seen from my channel a lot. But I had a fascination for other things. Mainly two other things. Those being ships and skyscrapers. But mainly two certain kinds of that type of thing. And those two things were the Titanic and the World Trade Center. During my life of growing up, I was obsessed with learning about these icons of engineering. They're both from a bygone era, and unfortunately, they no longer exist. Well, okay, they kinda no longer exist, but you get my point. However, I've been obsessed with these two things for so long that I've started to notice something with them. I've been realizing that they have similar significance in terms of retrospect, incidents, and fate. So today, I thought I would explain how I think the Titanic and the World Trade Center have very similar significance. Before we begin, I must put up a disclaimer for this video. This video may show some imagery that may be disturbing to some viewers and may not be recommended for some who may have suffered trauma from the events of 9/11. This video is also not recommended for people under the age of 14 or people who make jokes about these serious matters that happened in history. With all that said, viewer discretion is advised. So with that out of the way, let's begin the discussion. So, if you're all familiar with the history of these two great achievements of engineering, you would know what happened to them. But in case you don't know, I'll give a brief summary for both of them. Titanic was the largest ship ever built during her time and was proclaimed to be unsinkable. She left for her maiden voyage on April 10th, 1912. 4 days into her voyage, the ship struck an iceberg and sank to the bottom of the ocean in less than 3 hours, claiming the lives of nearly 1,500 people. The World Trade Center was a complex that was erected in Lower Manhattan, New York in 1973. The complex was famous for its two large twin towers in the middle of it. On September 11th, 2001, a group of Islamic terrorists hijacked two planes and crashed them into both of the towers. Less than 2 hours later, both of the towers came down, claiming the lives of nearly 3,000 people. Now, what you're probably asking is, how do these two incidents have similar significance? Well, let me explain. We'll start with Titanic. When Titanic was first built back in 1912, they claimed that the ship was designed to be virtually unsinkable. You see, in case the ship ever suffered a breach or impact below the water, in order to prevent the water from spreading, the ship was divided into compartments so that they could trap the water inside the compartment with the sealing of a watertight door. This was shown perfectly in 1911 when Titanic's sister ship, Olympic, suffered a collision with the HMS Hawk. Here's how it was estimated. According to the research, Titanic could have 3 compartments flooded and still sail on. The ship could also have a 4th compartment flooded and still mostly stay afloat. However, if a 5th compartment were to be flooded, there would be no chance for the Titanic to stay afloat. In the case of Titanic's collision with the iceberg, 6 compartments ended up being torn open, which was way more than what the ship could handle. As a result, Titanic's fate was sealed instantly. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, the ship sinks, breaks in half, and heads to the bottom of the ocean. Now let's look at the World Trade Center's situation. When the towers were constructed, they were claimed to be some of the strongest buildings ever constructed. It was claimed that the towers and how they were designed would allow them to last for at least 1,000 years. In other words, they would survive for several generations. They would be able to handle anything that came their way. It was also stated that they would have the ability to withstand a plane crash. But Automatic, we're pretty sure that wasn't the case from what happened on 9/11. They both collapsed from plane crashes. Yes, I know, but let me explain what I mean by this. The towers were constructed between 1968 and 1973. The largest commercial planes at the time of their construction were the Boeing 707 and the Boeing 747. They assumed that a plane like a Boeing 707 would not be enough to bring them down. The Boeing 707 was first built in 1957 and at the time was one of the most familiar jet crafts at the time of the World Trade Center's construction. Now, before we discuss the next part, I want to quickly explain something. Before September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Center actually suffered attacks and fire damage at least 2 times before this. On February 15th, 1975, a 3-alarm fire broke out on the 11th floor of the North Tower, which spread between floors 9 and 14. After this, the towers were equipped with sprinklers. On February 26, 1993, a group of terrorists from the same group with the planes set off a bomb inside the basement of the World Trade Center. But the towers survived the bomb. These 2 incidents happened on the low levels of the World Trade Center, but both times the towers survived the incidents. It should also be noted that the towers were also equipped with fireproof coating around its steel beams and structure to prevent fire from weakening the structural integrity of the buildings, which makes sense for buildings this big. Alright, with that out of the way, let's now get on to the fate of the towers. Now, let me explain what they meant by the towers could withstand a plane crash. From what I could guess, when they said that the towers could withstand a plane crash, they were more than likely referring to a plane that's low on fuel and not going that fast. And it's no surprise, planes have crashed into buildings before, such as the Empire State Building back in 1945. But that's a story for another day. Now let's see what ended up happening. First off, the planes used that day were not Boeing 707s. Both planes used were Boeing 767s. And for those who are curious, here's a size comparison between the 2 types of planes. The Boeing 767s are much bigger and much faster. The second thing I want to point out is where these planes departed. Both of these planes, American 11 and United 175, departed from Logan International Airport in Boston. Both of these planes left around the same time, which we're talking around 8 a.m. to 8:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and were both headed for Los Angeles, which is on the other side of the US, which means both of these planes would need full fuel tanks for their journey. Both of these planes were hijacked within 14 to 30 minutes after takeoff, which means They weren't even halfway across the US by the time they were hijacked. By the time they would reach Manhattan, their tanks would still be mostly full. At 8:46, Flight 11 crashed into the first tower of the World Trade Center. And by 9:03, Flight 175 crashed into the second tower. These planes and their jet fuel poured into the towers, sending them up in flames. The heat from the fuel was so intense that the water in all the sprinklers evaporated and the fire coating on the steel beams was completely stripped. As a result, this was way more than what the towers were designed to withstand, and ultimately signed their death sentence. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapses due to the damage, fire, and integral weight all on top of it. "30 minutes later, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapses from the structure finally failing to hold up. Leaving Manhattan with mangled debris all over the ground. Both the Titanic and the World Trade Center were both put in scenarios that they were designed to handle, but the situation was way more than what people expected. And although it's a shame that both of these icons are gone now, they help us learn lessons and help us to make sure stuff like the incidents they were involved in never happen again. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video of me explaining something that you might not have realized until now. With that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on whatever I decide to upload to this channel. Peace.